Hey guys, here's the gear for today's shave. Tabac is the soap of choice, hadn't been used in a while, and I'm glad to get back to it. We'll keep going on the outside here. Frank Shaving First Finest Badger Brush. It's a few years old. Wolfman WR1 46 gap, and Personna Comfort Coated razor blades. I'll go ahead and unwrap. But before that, look at the whiteness here of these tips, because this brush has been soaking for about half an hour. And so isn't that interesting? When this is a truly gel-tipped brush, very soft, artificially so because of the treatment there, the bleaching treatment on the tips. But this is a jelly brush. You know, it's not crazy jelly. I don't feel like I'm just slopping a bunch of sponges on my face, but it's my most jelly brush. And I do enjoy using it. It's got good flex to the bristles. It's not too stiff, and it's comfortable, and it doesn't have too much gel for me, so I do enjoy it. For a long time, it was my only jelly brush. So the Wolfman WR1 here has that, I think this is the H2 handle, barber pole style handle, aristocrat style is what some people call it. And the 46 gap here is a mild base plate for the Wolfman WR1, more mild than usual. So the Personna here, these blades were given to me by pretty sure it was Seth, and these say made in the US, assembled in Mexico. Sometimes if you have a no-name brush from the Family Dollar or a store, you can look on the back, and if it says made in Israel, then you kind of can get a clue as to, or Vietnam is another one, as to which private label company, might have actually done the making of that blade. So Personna Comfort Coated are this, and I thought about taking all those blister packs off so that I could store these blades more compactly, but there's no markings on this type of container at all to tell me what it is, and so I'd be losing the identification of the blade. It does say stainless. It's probably coated with something, like Teflon or platinum. I think I have heard somebody say that all blades are coated with some type of well, yes, of course it is, because it says comfort coated. So it does have some type of coating on it. There is another way that I believe I've seen these packaged, and I think it's a bulk packaging, where it's a little rectangle about this big, and they're just in there in envelopes, in paper envelopes, and they're just stacked, about 100 of them in a pretty small box. And that, historically, I think has been a pretty good blade for me. And so we're going to try these today, the ones I got from Seth, and you can just push in the direction of the arrows, and a blade will start to come out. In the olden days, you would take your razor, and your razor would have a rail kind of like this, but it would be on the base plate instead of the top cap, and that rail could then be put into the edge there, and then your handle was attached. These are those older Gillette razors, and so then you'd be able to remove the blade without ever touching it by using that rail, the center rail there of the old Gillette razor. But I don't think that lasted very long, but the pack here has remained even to this day. Maybe some people just expect that, but I mean, it is kind of a nice way to remove razor blades from a package, to where you just push them, and then when it comes out, you're able to grab it from a safe end instead of having the razor blades be where you would need to touch. Now, this doesn't even say Personna anywhere. It does, of course, say Personna on the pack. It says it on the back as well, 5 blades in the pack. So I better not ditch those blister packs. So we've got basically 4 arrows on each side, and I don't see any more writing other than that. There are a number of marks right here on the end and right here. And that probably is something to help with the manufacturing process, for them to know like which machine which machine did which side of the blade or which end of the machine they might need to adjust, just in case they have a batch of blades roll off the assembly line and have some problems, so they can correct the machine. All right, so comfort coated Personas. Persona is a tricky blade because they have put out the same blade under different names and different lines, different countries, different things like that. And so sometimes it's really tricky to figure out how many unique blades Persona actually does have. And there are many web posts online that try to explain it and sometimes end up to be confusing. So we're going to try the comfort coated first time use, as of course you might assume, since I just pulled the blade from the container. Something else about these containers that's very handy for travel, on the back side, it's going to be, oftentimes it's just one of these holes, but in this one it has two. You take a used blade, slide it in there, and it snaps into place, and it can't leave. It locks it in there, and that's your disposal bank, to where this, once you get rid of all of the blades, can be pitched away safely, and kids who, in developing countries, kids who might run through the garbage are not going to be injured, or recycle handlers or trash people are not going to be injured by razor blades. All right, so the razor's ready to go. Let us load up on the Tabac. Hasn't been used in a while. Usually I tack on an extra 5 or 10 seconds to load time in that case. Let's just load for 30 seconds and see what happens. With these gel tips, I've also sometimes learned that they don't pick up, since they're so soft, soap as quickly as other tips do. So let's just go for about 30 seconds in this case. I've taken fine soaps, the hard puck fine soaps, and thought I needed to, in a similar way, load a lot, and I have just come away with 8 passes of lather instead of, 8 or 9 passes instead of what I really wanted. And so I could be making a mistake, but let's do 30 anyway. And 25 is going to roll around right now. You can hear it moving around because the soap shrank because of the time and the loss of moisture in the soap. If this kind of soap, if you use it every day or every week, then it'll stay locked into place very nicely. Time passes quickly, and we've just got 5 more seconds now. And the fact that it's not overflowing here, I'm glad that I chose to do the 30 seconds. Now, this is a potent product here, and so just because I don't see a ton of lather on the brush here, that doesn't make me necessarily apprehensive. However, it does mean that to kind of start to activate things, I might start to put a little bit of water right away in the bowl. I'm going to rinse my face right now, get those hairs to start soaking and get softer with the water, and I'm going to fill up my little jigger so that we can track how much water we use. I've been really congested for about a week. I apologize for any sniffing. You've probably picked up on it already, but I'll try to keep that off camera at all as much as I can. Tabac, and this is the older version before they switched over to the vegan version. This is the tallow Tabac. Has a divisive scent, polarizing, very much so. A lot of guys love to hate on this scent. Grandma's purse might be how they like to describe it. But I didn't mind it from the beginning. I definitely get what people are talking about. But the way I like to look at it is, if you kind of dive deeper into the scent, you can catch that that kind of harsh tobacco, that punchy kind of tobacco scent, a woody type tobacco scent that I really enjoy. Kind of an oud family of scents. Oh, you know what? I have been too vigorous with this knot. It is starting to come apart. That is funny. What shall we do? I'm going to hold the end of the knot. I have these O-rings on there. Let's just try and see if we can salvage the shave. Obviously, I could switch to another brush. I like to use silicone to adhere my knots, and it looks like I think I used coins. This may even be the first knot I ever glued up. I used coins, and I bet I didn't get enough silicone between a certain set of coins or something like that, because this has been a vigorous amount of stirring at the initial part there when it was drier, and and so this is kind of hanging on by a thread. You can see how firm that lather is relatively, not even moving as it doesn't have a lot of water weight because it still needs more water added. I felt it before it disconnected. I felt it start to move. I felt that tapping as the plug of the soap with the coins was going back and forth up against its neighbors. I may be forced to switch to a different brush. Just today, as I received some other brushes as a part of a large order, I thought to myself, as I picked up this brush to use it today, I thought, you know what? This handle, I had to bevel down a little bit on a ridge that was around the handle right at this point. Yep, and there we go. This is one I bought from Whip Dog, and it just had this little bevel at just the wrong place for my fingers. Nothing wrong with the handle. And so I actually, you may even be able to see it. You can see the part where I kind of brushed it down with a Dremel head sanding because it's not glossy in certain spots. And I made it into a good handle that I enjoyed, and I definitely like the pattern. It's a simple resin handle. Yeah, you know what? I should have etched with a blade or something the bottom there because, see, it's pristine. And yep, I see the penny. I put a penny, but from the silicone that's around it, it just didn't adhere to the bottom of the handle very, very well. That surface, it's glossy. And I've done this in recent installations I've done. I have done kind of some etching. But that's the good thing about silicone. You can easily re-glue this back into place. If you made a mistake and didn't put enough glue in, big deal. You scrape away the unused glue, and then you just re-glue it. And in a couple of days, it cures up and you're ready to go. Whereas with epoxy, it's permanent. And so if you've glued it in too deep or too shallow, then there's no way to adjust it. And that's what I like about silicone. But let's see what happens if we just hold on to it by the glue bump. The glue that is holding the root of all the fibers together. How about that? Well, I'm going to clean up another handle, move it to take this opportunity to move it into a little nicer handle. One that fits my hand a little better. So now the lather, it's got more of a sheen to it because it's got more moisture. Got my fingers, I'm going to do a lot of finger rinsing today because of needing to get my hands into the lather more. Let's add just a little more water. So far we have added 21 or 22 milliliters. Talk about being aware of the knot and its flexing and things like that. Maybe I'm more aware now than I usually am. Now that the lather is more slick, it's actually harder to control, harder to hold on to. There we go. Got a nice glossy look to it. It's a heavier lather now that we put some water into it. And while the smell of tobacco is something that people argue about and write mean things on the internet about, only the idiots will say that tobacco doesn't perform well. And I can say that with authority because I just haven't seen anybody competent throw shade on tobacco's performance. Everybody knows that it performs really well. All right, not only, the brush not only will be today's method of lathering. I guess if you're traveling a lot and you want to save space, you could do this, right? In a way, it could be handy because you can very easily change your grip on the knot. You could restrict the fibers so that they are closer together and give you a more firm experience. But as usual, with this easy splay and these super soft tips, this is very comfy, very luxurious. I could use a little bit more water, but I think I'm good here. I'm going to work it for a little bit longer. Matter of fact, I'm going to add just a few drops to the brush. Bring in a little bit more water. You know, there's something very what's the word I'm looking for? I bet some of you know what I'm about to say. There's something more visceral, something more natural about manipulating the knot by just the base here. There's no handle in the way to interfere with the feeling of the bristles between my fingers. The bristles are talking to my fingertips and translating what they're feeling on my face. They're no longer interfered with by that handle. I'm not saying I'm going to go handleless from here on out, but I didn't expect to like that kind of feeling. I also think it's a little bit of a nuisance to have to rinse your hand all the time. Dealing with a few days of growth today, and so let's just see what happens with this mild head. Even if we've got a great performing lather, blade moving through the hair very nicely. Blade choice is very subjective, and it can even depend, and often does depend, on the razor you're using. I mean, some blades work well for a person with all their different razors. Some people have to choose a certain blade when they use certain razors. I believe this blade, the Comfort Coated Platinum Personna, Comfort Coated Personna, generally does pretty well for me in most razors. It does seem to be an inexpensive offering, and so it might be a good one to try if you are on a budget. Yeah, very comfortable, no tugging at all. I could feel that I was coming at the hairs and that my razor was touching them. It didn't feel like nothing. It didn't feel like I was just zooming through them with butter, but there was no tugging at all. The blade was doing a great job, doing its job very well. So let's rinse. The powdery note that is in Tabac, I think is what makes it so polarizing. It has been around for a long time, and so that may be the reason for it. Since 1959. So it's not super old compared to things like Cella, but back in that time, a masculine scent like the tobacco with a little bit of powder was probably viewed a little better than it is maybe now. Back to my awesome little rudimentary basic knot lathering experience now. The blade did a great job with the razor in terms of hair removal. I'll bet I'd be able to quit after just 2 passes if I wanted to. I think I did get the lather hydrated about where I like it, even though I almost felt like I stopped short. But I think this is really close to where I might like it. Over here, you don't see a lot of lather, but that micro layer is on the skin. It's going to be protective, and it's going to be effective with no problem at all. Don't have to have a thick layer on. Very comfortable. Even more so, of course, than the first pass, because so much of the stubble has been removed. So it seems like, at least on the first and second pass, this is a good match of razor and blade, and that's good because this mild head has not agreed with every razor that I've put in it. Matter of fact, I think maybe I'd say, I think I've tried maybe 12 blades with it, and I think maybe a third have been really good with it. I do feel a little bit of tenderness, so this guy may actually be, you know, pretty efficient, pretty aggressive. This is the first use. Very often, a blade will be even better the second use. It will be smoother. Maybe almost like a burr has been created at the factory along the blade edge with the big equipment that shoots it out really fast. And so that first pass works down that burr. And so I'm going to use this next time I shave, and I'll bet it will be even smoother. I may even use the razor again with it to give it a good comparison just for that purpose. Guess who's got the hiccups? All right, the water on my face now. When I bend down and get a good rinse, that's when I get a concentration of the smell of the tobacco from the lather. And so that's why I keep commenting about the smell every time we come back from a rinse. And that powderiness, you know, of course, as you would assume, that's what makes people think of their grandma. And so if that wasn't there, that would be interesting to see. I would wonder how tobacco, the life of tobacco might have been different if that powder wasn't quite there. So yeah, we did end up using, sticking with the 22 milliliters of water. I think that was pretty much perfect. Let's go ahead and do a third pass just to kind of finish everything off. Looks like I've got 2 or 3 more passes of lather available to me if I had needed it. So I am glad I loaded for 30 seconds just to be on the safe side, but I could have definitely gone with 25 seconds of load time, maybe even 20. And this is tremendously slick. This is the kind of lather that I think if a person uses this regularly and they still say they need a pre-shave to help with the slickness of the shave, my guess would be that 99% of those people just aren't making a wet enough, a slick enough lather, as in the lathering skill is the problem and not the slickness of the soap. So we're just cleaning up at this point. It's gliding across the skin easily, and I'm always using my light touch, as light as I can be while still contacting the skin. And there we go. A little bit of tenderness, which proves that the edge is definitely doing some work. It's available to the skin. And let's get a good rinse now. This soap is kind of that old school type. People with super dry skin will definitely want to follow it up with a balm. An inexpensive but very effective one is Aquavelva 5-in-1 Sensitive. And you can get that at big box stores. The Stirling balms are also very effective. I think they cost a little bit more, and I don't think they're as nourishing as this one is, the Aquavelva, but they're still very good. And of course, they're available in a whole bunch of different scents. This is Scarn, and I had to buy it because I'm a fan of The Office and Michael Scott's alternative character, Michael Scarn. And with the tobacco notes that we've got going around here, I thought, you know what, this is kind of a cologne type scent. I bet it's a dupe of something, but I just don't remember what it is. I thought, you know what, surely that's going to match with Scarn. I left my face pretty wet, so this should be easy to disperse. But I wondered if that tobacco note that is in the Tabac soap that's still kind of resident in my face, I wonder if that would kind of combine with Scarn here to make something nice, to almost take the everyday cologne of Scarn and rough it up, harsh it up a little bit with its polarizing nature, and maybe that could happen in a good way. So that's why I decided to try that today. But a good base note like tobacco, I think, could work with so many other soaps, just like oud and woody, orange. Those are very flexible and versatile scents that can make it so easy to combine a soap with a good number of aftershaves. Yeah, the Scarn working very well with the Tabac. Yeah, that's about as effective as I thought it would be. Very enjoyable. A little bit like pleasant, but with a little bit more oomph and gravitas than it might normally have had. All right. Well, it turns out the Personna Comfort Coated, a pretty inexpensive blade, was a very nice shaver here in the 46 Wolfman WR1. And really enjoyed it. This is the Luna handle from Whipped Dog. And what's very funny, and I've had this for several years, I bought first the normal Luna handle without the stripes, without the pour being kind of different here. It was a solid black, and it was actually a different mold that we used that. With that one, when the contours of the handle went down and came back up, it was a more natural gradient, and it kind of cut off and then went for this bulbous part. But when I bought this one, because I like the normal Luna solid color so much, I thought, let's get the fancy one too, the fancy pour. But when I got it, it was more like it went down and it came up and went over like this as a curve, and then there was a bead that was over here. It wasn't just a come up and then cut down. It was actually a bead. And so that would ride along in my fingertips, and it just wasn't very enjoyable. And so that's why I cut it down. So it seemed like that was made from a different mold or a different cutter, or, I'm sure this was produced on a lathe. And it was just a slightly different pattern, and I didn't see that coming. But that's a good, inexpensive handle from Whipped Dog, and I just happened to find it not all that ergonomic with my own fingers, my own situation. So I'll be very pleased to take this knot and find a new home for it. All right, I showed that knot to you right out of the lather bowl. And here it is after a good rinsing. You can see the clumping that's going on with those gel tips. Obviously, I'm going to let this dry before I use it again, before I glue it back up. I have a separate video on how to glue, how to set a badger knot. If you Google, if you get on YouTube and do a search for how to set a knot, how to set a shaving brush knot, or how to glue a shaving brush knot, you'll probably find it. It'll probably be among the top 10 of the results that you'll get. You can also just search my channel for that and you'll find it, I'm sure. And see, here's the penny that I used back then. And look, the silicone turned green because of the penny. Since then, I have switched away from using coins because of the corrosion. I thought maybe that could affect the glue. And who knows, maybe it has, right? And so I can feel, and I'm feeling the silicone here instead of the penny. And so I know that there was silicone between the penny and the surface of the knot. I firmly believe that as you can see, a good amount of coverage was there. And so I firmly believe the problem was that the surface inside had not been roughed up or scored in any way. And so eventually, with enough force, enough leverage of working up kind of a dry lather, it gave up the ghost. But pretty much every brush I've ever put together, I use silicone. I'm not going to switch to epoxy. Like I said, it's easy to just glue back into place. And what I'll do is I'm going to switch. I use plastic washers now, or nylon washers, and so they're not going to corrode. Matter of fact, you can see, obviously, we've got kind of a greenish color to the silicone because of, I think, the pennies, right? The corrosion and stuff. So what I'll do, all you need to do to fix this is to scrape away all of the silicone from the bottom here. Let it dry, and I'll be able to glue it back up. I'll find another handle that I might like better now that I know that I enjoy this knot and I've got other handles to use. And also with this one, I did have some O-rings here because it turns out I mounted it a little too shallow in the handle. And so I'll remember that next time and sink it down a little deeper. I think this is just a 24 millimeter knot, but as you can see, it's got quite a big bloom. So you don't have to always go with a 26 or 28 necessarily. And here's what it looks like after I stropped it on the towel. With a knot with gel tips, they can be a little subjective to damage because of that bleaching treatment. And so I'm not aggressive when I dry the brush, just kind of a gentle moving up and down, Karate Kid style fashion to dry the brush. And as always, there's no need to put it on any kind of hanger to make sure it's upside down. As long as, like I just have done, as long as you remove that freestanding water from the inside of the brush, like what I've just done with the towel, then there's nothing to be acted on by gravity. You can just let the base sit on your countertop. It's not going to change how fast your brush dries. Matter of fact, those little brush stands that have the little two prongs can be problematic for your handles. An inexpensive one like that, like this, no big deal. It'll if it scratches up, it'll be fine. But if you pay a good amount for your handle and the brush, then you'll eventually get little marks on there if you choose a steel rack. And so that could potentially mark up a brush that you want to keep pristine. So that's one reason you may not want to use a brush rack kind of thing. Well, that's it for today's shave. How about this? Didn't see that coming. That was definitely a surprise. I did have a few more passes of lather left over, so we had plenty of that. I thoroughly enjoyed the Personna Blade, and it worked well in this razor. Scarn and Tabac were a great combination, and that is today's shave. All the best to you guys. We're in the beginning of the new year, and so I wish you a very good 2023. Take care now.